Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Up Show, the best Gamecocks podcast on the internet. Today is Thursday, August the 27th, 2020. On today's show, part 2 of my game-by-game predictions. As I wrap up my predictions for South Carolina's 2020 football season, I'll go through each and every single game in the second half of the season, give my thoughts, and reflect on the season as a whole, why I think South Carolina will finish that way, and what it will mean for Gamecocks football moving forward. Also, tons of news and notes to get into, your listener questions, voicemails, and also fantastic conversation, someone that I feel blessed to call a friend and one of the best in the business at what he does. Chris Marler of Saturday Down South joins the show. Phenomenal convo, guys. So sit back, relax, enjoy. It's all brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Guys, it's summertime. We're about to be in fall. We're about to be in football season. And at MyBookie, that can only mean one thing. It's winning season, baby. Winning season means doubling your first deposit. Winning season means free bets, super contests, Survivor, and more. At MyBookie, winning season is all about your chance to win big. Guys, you can bet anything. Bet NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball, UFC, college football, NFL, whatever it may be. The craziest sports summer and fall of your lifetime is here. Guys, it's simple. Make your picks, win big, collect your cash. Invest in your intuition. Select from hundreds of future bets, or you can bet games in real time with MyBookie's live betting. Guys, the listeners of this show are smart. You guys know what you're doing. Put that big brain of yours to good use. Use promo code Gamecocks. Again, that's promo code Gamecocks at mybookie.ag. Mybookie.ag. Use promo code Gamecocks, and you get to double your first deposit. Guys, new players get up to $1,000 in free play. So what that means is you go to mybookie.ag, you put in promo code Gamecocks. Whatever you put in, up to $1,000, they're going to match that. You put in $500, they're going to give you $500 in free play. You put in $750, they're going to give you $750. You put in $1,000, guess what? They're going to give you $1,000 in free play. It's literally free money to play with on the site. It's designed to add more excitement to the sports you love and the games you bet. Guys, thousands of cross-sport wagers, props, and parlays await. Sign up now to bet with the best and celebrate your victory. Your winning season begins today only at MyBookie. Let's get it. Spurs Up Show, as always. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Happy Thursday. Very, very exciting. Very excited for today's show. Very excited for a lot of reasons. Number one, guys, do you realize we are less than a month from kickoff? We are 30 days away from kickoff. Do you also realize there is a college football game on TV this weekend? Granted, it's not SEC. I think it's Austin, PA, and God, I can't even remember the other team, but who cares? It's football. It's college football on the television this weekend, Saturday night. I'm very excited for that, guys. And also, I'm excited because we are wrapping up the game-by-game predictions. I'm wrapping up my game-by-game predictions, giving you guys my thoughts on the second half of the season and the season as a whole. You guys are going to know my season predictions as a whole after this show. Pumped to get into it, guys. It's always a blessing and pleasure to talk to you guys. Before we get into everything, a couple different housekeeping items. First off, if you have not done so, we're about to hit 300 reviews on iTunes, guys. If you haven't done so, take 5 seconds, leave 5 stars, leave your thoughts, your feedback, whatever it may be. If you love something, you hate something, there's things you want to see more of, less of, whatever. Whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, does not matter the platform. Take 5 seconds, go leave 5 stars, go leave your thoughts, your feedback. It helps boost up the podcast for those that maybe have never heard of it. They can find it. Also, if you're listening and you're not subscribed, not sure what you're doing, hammer that subscribe button, guys. You're going to want to have the notifications of when the podcast drops because, like I've said before, when the season gets here, when we kick off, game week, which is only, 23 days away, basically 3 weeks away, I'm going back to daily podcasts, Monday through Friday. So you're going to want to get the daily notifications when the podcast drops. So, again, rate, subscribe if you've already done so. Thank you so much, and I appreciate that. Also, if you haven't been following along, NCAA 14 season simulation still going. South Carolina at the time I'm recording this, sitting right now at 3-3 overall. They've been a lot of fun. If you haven't tuned in, doing them every single night, 7 o'clock on Twitter and Periscope, check those out. Also, speaking of the simulation, just wanted to let you guys know, Friday, there will be no Rowdy Rooster Radio and there will be no simulation. I'm going out of town for the weekend with a couple of friends, so there will be no simulation. There will be no Rowdy Rooster Radio content. All the other content will go on as scheduled, but no Rowdy Rooster Radio, no season simulation. So I want to let you guys know. Okay, let's dive into it. Let's get after it. Since I know I'm such a popular guy after my first half predictions when I picked South Carolina to go 1-4, and of course, Gamecock Nation reacted positively as I thought they would, but I want to break this down. South Carolina now going into the second half of its season. How will the Gamecocks fare? Can they turn it around in the second half? Some big-time opportunities with Texas A&M. You can snap the streak. Georgia, can you get another big upset at Kentucky? Can you extend your streak to 2 wins in a row? Let's go ahead and dive into it. Against Texas A&M, we'll start. Coming out of the bye week, Gamecocks taking on the Texas A&M Aggies. And listen, we all know the background behind this game. And we know why South Carolina fans, myself included, want this game so bad. The Gamecocks have been so close, it seems like. You take out last year, obviously, because that was a blowout. But this game is always close. Every single year it comes down to tooth and nail. I mean, South Carolina fans, you could certainly argue the Gamecocks should have won at least one of these matchups since the two teams started playing in 2014. South Carolina has never beaten Texas A&M in the history of its program. You've lost 6 in a row. And, you know, guys, I feel like this is one of those losing streaks. Obviously, again, it's not nearly as bad as what the Kentucky streak was, right? There's a much difference in the way the programs are viewed and just the programs as a whole when you look at Kentucky and then Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a very highly regarded team. You're going to hear Chris Marler talk about in the interview later what his thoughts on Texas A&M are. They're catching a lot of hype this preseason. I think justifiably so. Listen, they have Kellen Mond, who's the most veteran quarterback in the SEC. They return a ton of talent. They've recruited at a high level. You have Jimbo Fisher. So they're going to be a good football team. Again, this is one, though, I think the thorn that is stuck in Gamecock fans and really this program side. It's tough for me to feel like as a program you're really making progress when you have losing streaks of 4, 5, 6 against certain teams. So you need to snap this streak. There's no question. Listen, A&M coming to Williams-Brice, I think last year was an anomaly. I think this will be a very, very close, competitive game. I think South Carolina, you're going to see their offense start to click a little bit more because, again, one of my big things I talked about in the first half, I think there's going to be an adjustment offensively. I think you're going to need a few weeks to find out who are our playmakers. Heck, who's our quarterback? But who are our playmakers that we can depend on offensively? I think you start to see South Carolina click a little bit here, but I don't think it's enough. I think Texas A&M comes into Williams-Brice. Listen, they have too much talent. You have a veteran quarterback, and honestly, man, in college football, if you have the best quarterback, there's a good chance you're going to win. I think they'll have the better quarterback on that day. I've got Texas A&M beating South Carolina at Williams-Brice 24-21. Again, I think it's a really competitive game, really close game. Would not surprise me at all to see South Carolina win this one. Would not surprise me at all to see the Gamecocks pull the upset in this one. But right now, I think Texas A&M is too talented, too good. They have the veteran quarterback. I like Jimbo Fisher as a head coach, especially against Will Muschamp. So give me Texas A&M 24-21, which would drop South Carolina to 1-5 now. 1-5 on the season. And like I said before, I put up a social media graphic about it, and I said on the show on Monday, to have a successful year, in my opinion, I think the minimum expectation should be 5 wins or more, a 500 or better record. You're now sitting at 1-5, and the best case scenario for your season is 5-5. So let's move into the next game at Ole Miss. Gamecocks are obviously going to be in a position now, if you're 1-5, you're going to need a major bounce back. You're going to need a major bounce back. Lane Kiffin taking over in Oxford, his first season with the Ole Miss Rebels. Listen, I think South Carolina at this point again, I really do believe we're going to see the best game South Carolina has played offensively to this point. I think you're going to start to see the emergence of offensive playmakers. And I think South Carolina just gets a much, much needed W. I think it gets a much needed W. I got South Carolina beating Ole Miss 31-20 in Oxford. Like I said, I think Lane Kiffin, I expect him to do some nice things in year one. I definitely think there are some reasons for Ole Miss to be positive. I think at quarterback, I think they have some offensive talent. I think you'll see them offensively play pretty well at times. Because, listen, again, Lane Kiffin, say whatever you want about the guy. I mean, he certainly hasn't made a lot of friends over his coaching tenure, but he does know offense. I mean, give him that. But I think the Gamecocks, again, I think it'll start clicking offensively, and I got them scoring 31 points in this game, and I think they do get the win in Oxford, a much, much, much needed win to get to 2-5. I've got South Carolina winning this one 31-20 over the Ole Miss Rebels. Moving into the next week against Missouri. Now, I've talked about this Missouri game a little bit, and really both of these, the Ole Miss game and the Missouri game. One of the things I liked about the old schedule so much more than this new schedule is I really thought it gave you the opportunity to build momentum early. I really did. I thought it gave you that opportunity to build momentum early. You know, with opening with Coastal, ECU week 2, and then Missouri, a team with a brand new head coach week 3. Now you get the Missouri Tigers late in the season, who, if you guys forgot, their head coach is Eli Drinkwitz, who beat you with App State's talent last year. So what is he going to do with Missouri's? Right? With that being said, you get Missouri at home. I do think there will be a transition period for Mizzou. They have tons of question marks all over the field. And I am going to lean with South Carolina, and you guys might be surprised the score because I don't think it'll be very close. I've got the Gamecocks getting the win against Mizzou 35-17. Very similar to the Ole Miss score. Listen, I think South Carolina, again, Mizzou is one of these games you've got to have. You absolutely have to have it. You should be favored in this football game, depending, I guess, on what Mizzou does. But no question, you look at the rosters right now, I think South Carolina has a much better roster than Missouri. So I've got the Gamecocks getting a big win over Mizzou. I've got 35-17 again at home. I think things are really, really starting to click offensively for South Carolina. And I've got them getting the win 35-17, which, again, will put you at 3-5. It'll put you at 3-5 with 2 games remaining. Unfortunately, you run into a buzzsaw the next week. You run into a buzzsaw the next week in the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia coming to your house. We all know the history of the South Carolina-Georgia game. It's always a close game. It's always a battle. These two teams are extremely familiar with one another, which, again, I think is a reason for a lot of these close matchups. You know, South Carolina has a lot of Georgia players on their roster, and Georgia seems to always have a fair number of South Carolina guys on their roster. So, you know, you got the huge upset win last year. Biggest upset in program history, in my opinion. One of the biggest wins in recent memory, beating Georgia. So the big question remains, can you do it again? Can you do it again? Can you take down the Bulldogs for a second year in a row? Again, you get them at Williams-Brice. You get them late in the season. So, again, you feel like, you know, like I said, I think your offense at this point is progressing along nicely. But my short answer is no. Listen, the win over Georgia last year was awesome. It was great. Going between the hedges, getting that W. I mean, it was a magical day. I mean, anybody that was watching, that was a magical day. That's one of those moments none of us will ever forget. But I think, listen, second to last week of the season, Georgia, similar kind of like I said about Florida, Georgia's going to be on a mission. Georgia's going to be on a mission. Yes, they're breaking in a new offense. Yes, they're breaking in a new quarterback. But I think by this point in the season, they've got all that worked out. They have 2 fantastic options to choose from in Jamie Newman and JT Daniels. Georgia will have one of the best, if not the best, defense in the country this year. And listen, you know, not taking anything away, of course, but what happened last year against Georgia, you know, you get a pick 6 from Israel McClamu. Israel McClamu has 3 interceptions in one game. You can't really depend on a Herculean effort like that again from one individual player for USC. So listen, I think Georgia's going to have revenge on their minds. They're not going to be looking past this one. I think you caught them at a very interesting place in the schedule last year. You know, noon kickoff, between the hedges, middle of the season. Did you catch them napping a little bit? Who knows? I don't think that'll happen again. second to last game of the season. Georgia knows they have to win that game because I think it's going to be a neck-and-neck race with Georgia and Florida. I've got the Dogs getting the win in Columbia. Give me Georgia 27-10. Listen, I just think that I really just think that Georgia defense is going to be suffocating. I'm a believer in Georgia's defense. I think they're one of the best in the country. So give me Georgia to get their revenge, come into Williams-Brice, get the W 27-10, which would drop South Carolina to 3-6 heading into the matchup at Kentucky in Lexington. Listen, I know a lot of people don't understand, I guess, the preseason hype that Kentucky's getting. I'll say the little bit of preseason hype. I don't think it's anything drastic or anything, but by some publications, they've been ranked as a preseason top 25 team. If the media picks would have came out, Kentucky would have been picked to finish ahead of South Carolina. There's no doubt in my mind. They've been getting a little bit of hype here and there. Just speaking on the Cats, you return Terry Wilson, who, listen, I don't think is a fantastic quarterback, but a veteran guy, has beaten South Carolina. Kentucky has recruited and developed, I should say, really well in the line of scrimmage. They'll have one of the better offensive and defensive line units in the SEC. And my big thing with this game, again, I've said this before. I've said it all offseason. You take a look at South Carolina's history playing in Lexington. The Gamecocks have never, ever fared well in Lexington. I mean, even when they were really good, even when South Carolina was beating Kentucky every single year, the Gamecocks have not fared well in Lexington. South Carolina snaps the streak last year. You had lost 5 in a row to them. Thank God you get that monkey off your back. But I think this South Carolina team limping into this game at 3-6, I've got to go with Kentucky. I've got to go with Kentucky on the road in Lexington. It's been a house of horrors for South Carolina. I think it's an extremely close game. I think it's a very winnable game. I think it's a coin flip type of game. But I've got Kentucky getting the win 21-20, final score. South Carolina, the last time the Gamecocks won in Lexington was 2012. That's how long ago it was. You think South Carolina lost in 14, 16, 18, 2010. South Carolina's lost, 4 of its last 5 in Lexington. So I don't know what it is. I don't know why this is such a difficult place to play for South Carolina. And again, some of you guys might hate me for this pick. That's totally fine. But you ask anybody right now, you go look at an early line in Vegas. If we were able to get a line in Vegas, Kentucky is undoubtedly the favorite. No question. And you're going to hear this conversation later with Chris Marler of Saturday Down South. I think undoubtedly, and again, this is not a popular opinion, but undoubtedly Mark Stoops is a better football coach than Will Muschamp. He is. So in this type of environment, this type of swing game, I got to side with the Cats. I got Kentucky getting the win 21-20, which would put South Carolina 2-3 in the second half of their season, and more importantly, 3-7 overall. 3-7 overall. And again, I know that I will probably get a lot of heat. I'll get a lot of people coming at me for these predictions. A lot of people that aren't going to be happy with these predictions. But let me give you guys my thoughts on just the season as a whole, that 3-7 record. Like I said on Monday's show, and like I've said all offseason, 5 wins or more is the minimum expectation for me for this 2020 season. I think that should be the minimum expectation, 500 or better. There's enough talent on this roster to win 5 or more games. I have no doubts in my mind. South Carolina's been recruiting at a top 20 clip the past 5-6 years. You can't tell me there's not enough talent to go 500 or better. This season to me, and I kind of mentioned it on a Monday show, this season to me is all going to come down to Mike Bobo and that offense. Like I said, I think things will start to click a little bit later in the year. But it's all going to come down to that Mike Bobo offense. Listen, again, I think there's a path to 5 wins. I think there's a path to 6 wins. I really do. I really see it. Listen, Kentucky's a swing game you could easily win. I think Texas A&M's a swing game you could win. I already talked about, I think Auburn. I think that's more of a swing game than people give it credit for. Tennessee is certainly a swing game you can win. That's 4 games right there. That's the difference between 3-7 and 7-3. Heck, if you split those, you're at 5-5. So I think the path is there. But I've said this before, and be fair or not, this is my thought process on my predictions for this season. I got burned last year picking South Carolina to go 7-5. I got burned. So my thought process on this, I think and you're going to hear this again in the conversation with Chris Marler. My thought process on this, listen, I think there's enough talent to win 5 or more games. But I do not trust Will Muschamp to get the job done. I just don't. I don't have that trust anymore. I do not trust Will Muschamp to get the job done. I don't trust and believe in Will Muschamp in winning these important swing games. I don't. So I'd rather be on the wrong side of things when the Gamecocks win, when they overachieve versus underachieve, right? I'd rather be on the wrong side in that regard. So listen, I've got South Carolina 3-7. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Again, I know this will not be popular. I'm not going to make any friends with these predictions, no doubt. But this is my, honestly, just unbiased look on this team and what this team has going for it right now. Again, I think the path to 5 or 6 wins is certainly there. It's there. But the other thing I'll say to that, too, is this. We're talking about a team that won 4 games last year when it had 4 non-conference games on the schedule. So how can you expect me to pick a team to win 4 games or more when it has 10 conference games on the schedule? So, like I said, unpopular. I'd love to hear what you guys' thoughts are, though, predictions. And listen, I'd love to hear this, too, because I've had some people on social media, tons of them actually, that give their thought, and I love it. I love the banter. I love the opinions. I love hearing what people think is going to happen. But when you do that, give some context and give me a record. What do you think and why? I think, again, if your offense clicks, it all comes down to Mike Bobo and that offense. The performance of the quarterbacks, finding offensive playmakers. If that happens, certainly, I think certainly 5-5 is no doubt in the cards. 6-4 is in the cards, personally, I think. But we need to see it. I'm in show me mode. I'm in show me mode right now. I am in show me mode. And I know a lot of people are asking, you're going to ask, does 3-7 get Will Muschamp fired? I'm not sure 3-7 is enough. I really think you'll have to go 2-8 or worse to really get some traction. I could be wrong, but like I said on Monday's show, I've pretty much just accepted that he's going to be back next year. I think the pandemic is going to give him a mulligan. And listen, on one side of the coin, sure, these coaches deserve a mulligan because they're dealing with things that are unprecedented. I mean, who knows? By the way, let's just point this out. Who knows with these predictions? Because, hey, South Carolina could play Georgia, and the week of, Georgia's quarterbacks are both out with coronavirus. So, who knows how these results could be different? They could be drastically different on outside factors that we're not even thinking about. But getting back to what I was saying, on one side of the coin, you say, you know what? These coaches should get a mulligan. These are unprecedented circumstances. Give them the mulligan for sure. But on the other hand, there has to be some sort of sense of accountability still. There has to be. So, listen, if South Carolina goes 3-7, do I think they should move a different direction? Absolutely, I do. I think if they go worse than 5-5, there's a real case for it. There's a real case for it. But I don't think it'll happen. So, again, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Call me an idiot. Call me whatever you want to call me. 3-7 overall is what I got South Carolina. I think the ceiling is much higher than that. I really do. And I tell you what, to be honest with you guys, because I know a lot of you out there, you think I hate South Carolina and I want to see them lose. It pains me to pick this team to go 3-7. This team is so much better than 3-7. It feels like an insult. It really does. It feels like an insult. But as of right now, with, again, everything I've mentioned, offensively, your head coach, show me. Show me. Go out there and win these toss-up games. Go out there, win the games you're supposed to win, and steal 2 or 3. And we're going to be right where we want to be. But after last season, I'm very, very, very hesitant to pick this South Carolina team to do that. So 3.5, I said Vegas was right on the number. I thought they got the number perfectly, and I've got South Carolina finishing with 3. I think they nailed that number. So, again, 3-7 overall. Again, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, what you think. Again, do you think I'm an idiot? Do you agree? Whatever. Let's talk about it. Let's embrace debate. Would love to do it. Again, I've got 3-7 overall, 2-3 to finish out the season. Let's move into these news and notes really quickly, and then we will get into your listener questions. We got a voicemail as well, so let's dive into this. Couple just a quick tidbits. Nothing major, I guess, happening this week. South Carolina updated SEC title odds plus 12,500 via Bet Online. So, guys, if you have any spare cash laying around and you think the Gamecocks are going to shock the world and win the SEC, hey, $100 bet wins you $12,000. I mean, that's not a bad return right there. Heck, I might even throw 50 on it, because why not? Why not, right? One other thing really quickly, South Carolina basketball. Frank Martin and the boys picking up a commitment from Carlos Williams. Maybe it's Carlos, but it's Carlous. So I'm going to say Carlos Williams picking up a commit. So good job by Frank Martin and the boys on the recruiting trail. All right, let's dive into our listener questions. We will start with our voicemail.
Hey, Chris. Not going to get too much into it about, the Marshawn or the Gunner. I mean, that's like Gamecock gold right now. That's all anybody's talking about. But with this season, with Marshawn being out, with this Frankenstein-style offense, with who's going to be the quarterback, is it going to be the new guy and Colin? What's Luke going to be? This whole new offensive scheme. Like, is the missing piece using Colin Hill as your quarterback, the guy who knows the offense, like you mentioned, and also Adam, the fullback from Colorado State, who knows it just as much as Colin does? Or do you go with your tight ends and, trust in them, because you clearly don't have a known number 2 wide receiver? Who do you go to? Do you go with the slants with the tight ends? Do you go with the pulls and, like having them the lead blocker and just like get down and dirty with the run game? I mean, what honestly do you do? And, we've got a guy that's got a $13 million buyout who just seems to not finish what he starts, or even, honest to God, sometimes can't even start it, like App State. Just what, honest to God, could we really do other than, just get down and dirty, play some SEC football, and just run it down their throats? I know, like, back in the day, we used to, like, with Marshawn getting hurt mid-season, or, Spurrier just forgetting how to coach football halfway through. We usually get disappointment mid-season or towards the end when we was losing the Citadel. But instead, this year we kind of just get a slap in the face right at the beginning with Marshawn. It's just kind of a lot of missing pieces. Frankenstein offense, like I said. What do you do? Also, go Cox, baby.
I appreciate the voicemail, man. That I just want to say that is the sound of a man who has been beaten down by South Carolina football over his lifetime. I mean, that is someone who has been beaten down by South Carolina football, no doubt. That's what that sounded like. No, seriously, though, appreciate the voicemail. Listen, all your points are valid for the offensive side, and you're just kind of reinforcing what I said before. Let me say one thing, too, though. I am excited. There's certainly a part of me that is excited, because there's a sense of intrigue. Like, we don't really know. It's all guesswork, I guess. Now, there are certainly context clues that help us. about what Mike Bobo's offense is going to look like. We've heard different things from Adam Prentice. We've heard Mike Bobo speak a few times. Like, I think there's enough there to kind of pull what this offense is going to be about. But listen, I'm intrigued. I'm excited to see what's in store, see what they come up with, how they utilize the talent that is currently on the offensive side. Because, listen, I think there's still talent on the offensive side, certainly. So that there is a certain level of intrigue for me. What do they do? But no, listen, you make a good point. You make a really good point because you're going to have to get a little creative to have offensive success. You mentioned, South kind of running the ball down teams' throat. I mean, dude, I really think this is going to be a team built to win slugfest type of games. 20-17, 23-20, 24-21. Like, I think that's the type of team you're building. I think that's what this team, probably their identity is going to be. And listen, you've got a great defense. So, I mean, if you can make that work, by all means, make it work. If I'd almost rather see that. Like, I think South Carolina could go 5-5 with that type of team. Hey, we're going to be a team that, we're going to stick to our game plan. We're going to run the football. We are going to establish the run, but we're going to be very disciplined. We're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot. We're not going to turn the football over. We're not going to put our defense in bad positions. Because, listen, we know we have a good defense. Our defense is going to keep us in every single game we play. But, yeah, I think using the tight ends. Listen, you have some guys at tight end for sure. Nick Muse being the lead guy, I would say. I'm excited for Nick Muse and him returning. Listen, I think Shi Smith can have a good year. We've been hearing a lot about Rico Powers. Maybe he breaks out at wide receiver. Certainly, like you mentioned, it's a fact. There is no true number 2 wide out right now. No true number 2 guy. So, I mean, listen, you're just sort of, our caller there sort of just reinforcing what I said about this year and this team, which is that it's all going to come down to offensively. Because I'm a believer in this defense. I really am. I think this defense is going to be a top half of the SEC defense at minimum. I think it is. I think it's going to be a top half of the SEC defense at minimum. So, yeah, it's all going to come down to offensively. Can the offense do enough? And again, what is their actual identity going to be? I'll be very curious to see. Who's behind center? Be very curious to see. Personally, I don't have a preference. I just want to win games. I really don't care. You want to go with Hill, who knows the playbook more? Fine with me. You want to go with Helinski, who has the SEC experience and is fully healthy now? Totally fine with me. I think we can win with both. I really do. I think that we can win with both. But it is all going to come down to the offense. No doubt in my mind. Let's move to your questions. Just a few here. Dylan McLaren, 2. Will you be more supportive of Muschamp if he continues to recruit at a high level? I'm so glad you asked a question like this because, listen, I'm not supportive of Will Muschamp. I support Will Muschamp 110%. What was this again? Dylan McLaren, 2. Dylan McLaren, 2. I'm just the only person that will hold him accountable. There's no other South Carolina outlet that's going to be willing to say what I'm saying. I'm 100. Dude, that's the other thing. I don't care who the coach is. I want to win games. I want to win games. I don't care who our head coach is. I really don't. So I support Will Muschamp 110%. I mean, listen, I think the program, the standing of the program, I think is good. I like the overall standing of the program. I really do. I really do. But you got to win more games. That's it. You got to win more games. Because at the end of the day, that's what you make over $4 million a year to do. I mean, I've talked about before, the graduation numbers and people not getting in trouble, and that's all fine and dandy, and that's great, and that's things we all want and strive for in the program. But that's fluff at the end of the day, man. You get paid to win. You get paid to win. So, listen, I love what Muschamp is doing on the recruiting trail. I do. I mean, South Carolina has never had this many 5-stars commit, it feels like. At least it feels like. I could be wrong, but I don't think the Gamecocks, recruiting-wise, have ever had this many 5-stars committing. I don't think so. Or at least it's the same or very, very similar as when Spurrier was here. But I'm 110% supportive of Will Muschamp. But I'm also going to hold him accountable and be critical. You get paid a lot of money to coach football. And you have the talent, and you have the facilities, and you have the fans. There's no excuse. There's no excuse to not win. And again, for this season, I feel like there's no excuse not to get to 500 or better. That's just my opinion. So, Krusty Andy, will Muschamp and Kirby Smart get into a fist fight? Who wins and why? Give me Muschamp. I think overall, he's a scrappy dude. Give me Muschamp. Scott W. Lawson, odds they end up trying Jordan Birch out at running back. I think 0. Maybe 1%. Maybe there's some jumbo package like Clemson did with Christian Wilkins. But no, South Carolina's never really been all that for using defensive guys on offense. So I don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. Everything _college_football _. What's your minimum amount of wins to keep Muschamp? I think it should be 5. To show real progress in the program, to show you're headed on the right track, I think it should be 5. Will it be, though? I've already talked about that. But I think it should be 5. Let me put it this way. Keep Muschamp, a.k.a. show progress and feel good about where this program is going. You got to win at least 5 games to me. CP3 _presents _ Besides Shi Smith, who do you think will be that second guy? And if we go 0-10, does Muschamp return? Wide receiver 2, I think Xavier Legette's a guy I've talked about a lot this offseason. I think he's due for a breakout year. Rico Powers possibly. Maybe Jalen Brooks, the Wingate transfer. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd love to say Josh Vann or Trey Smith, but I just feel like at this point they're complete non-factors, it feels like. I mean, we've heard nothing about them through camp. And listen, it's just camp, and they're not going to give you a lot as it is, but, we've heard Jalen Brooks through camp. We've heard, we've heard Rico Powers' name a lot. We've heard Xavier Legette a little bit here and there, and obviously we know what he did as a freshman last year. So I think probably one of those guys is your second option. Keller Wofford. My opinion, 4-6 is best possible scenario. See, I disagree. I don't think it's the best case scenario. I don't think it's best case at all. Like I said, I think there's a path to 5 or 6 wins. I really do. I think there's a path to 5 or 6 wins. You're going to have to win some of those swing games, but it's there. It's possible. And I think, again, call me crazy. I think you have the offensive talent to get it – or excuse me, you have the talent as a whole to get it done. Will they do it? That's the big question. So, appreciate the questions, guys. Appreciate the voicemails. Always appreciate you guys interacting with the show. Let's move into our interview. Chris Marler of Saturday Down South, guys, just a phenomenal dude. I mean, we had a great conversation about literally everything, not just South Carolina football. We talked SEC football, his path in sports media, the pandemic obviously going on, a ton of other things as well. Chris Marler, again, I just want to give a shout-out. Awesome dude. They do a fantastic job over at Saturday Down South and, of course, his podcast as well, the Saturday Down South podcast. They do a phenomenal job. So, guys, sit back, relax, enjoy. It's brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. You didn't think SeatGeek went away, did you? As we get closer and closer to football, it's evident. Fans are going to be in the stands. Guys, you are going to need your tickets. You're going to need your tickets to these games. For sure. You're going to, because listen, the secondhand market, third parties, they're going to be more important than ever. With there being so few tickets available, you're going to want to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. You want to make sure you're saving as much money as possible, because I'm sure these things are going to be expensive. You're going to want all that taken care of. SeatGeek's the way to go. Go download the SeatGeek app. Go to SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code SPURSUP. You're going to save $20 off your first purchase. Guys, like I said, scalping's a thing of the past. Paper tickets are a thing of the past. It's all going to be done through your phone, through these apps. SeatGeek is the best one by far. They have a great ticket rating system which rates the tickets for you based on the type of deal you're getting, guys. So, again, Never again do you have to scalp. You don't have to deal with other people getting these tickets. And again, they're doing all the work for you. They're going to show you exactly where you're sitting, what you're paying. Are you overpaying? Are you getting a steal? And like I said, especially now with tickets being so limited, people are going to try to charge for tickets through the roof, right? SeatGeek is going to help you literally find the best deal. They're going to help you save the most money. And with our promo code, I'm putting money back in your pocket, $20 to be exact. I'm putting even more money back in your pocket. So again, that's our friends at SeatGeek. Go download the SeatGeek app. Go to SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code SPURSUP. That's SPURSUP to save $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy this conversation with Chris Marler of Saturday Down South. All right, joining us today on the Spurs Up Show. Very excited. Someone I am blessed to call a friend for sure. He's a member of Saturday Down South, co-host of the Saturday Down South podcast. He is a comedian. He's a man that wears many hats, a noted professional graphic designer. He's been on ESPN before. Just someone that you've probably heard of him. You've probably seen him. Vern Funquist, one of the best Twitter handles ever out there as well. Again, someone that I'm very happy to call a friend. Chris Marler joins the show. Chris, appreciate you taking the time, and it's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, of course, man. If I would have known you were going to do that intro, I would have come on like every single day. That was fantastic. I appreciate that.
Dude, I want to tell you, by the way, right before about an hour ago, before I had you on, I was sitting there thinking, because again, you are a noted comedian. You're a stand-up comic. Like you do it for real. You're not just somebody that says you do it. But
I'm not an internet comedian or like a
right.
I'm not funny, man. I'll just say it.
You're not Dane Cook, right? Pretty much. But anyway, so you're a legit comic. But the thing I was thinking about like an hour before we came on, for some reason, this came to my head. I'm a big Disney guy, and I was thinking about Finding Nemo, where they asked me, "Was like, hey, you're a clownfish, right? Say something funny." Like, how often do people tell you, like, when they find out you're a comic, like, "Hey, man, tell me a joke," and you're like, "What do you want me to do? Like, what do you want me to say?"
So, like, I think that's like that cliche. I think is so real for some comedians, and it's like it's always people that like. It's like your grandpa's Facebook group. That's the kind of people that do that. And it's like, it's never, no person that's ever said to me is a person I've ever wanted to have a conversation with. You just like can tell like flat out, like point blank, like at the beginning of the conversation, I'm like, well, I'm not going to get along with this person. That's the worst. Cause just whatever. It happens. Like when I first started doing it, it's been like 9 years and your family will start doing that, especially at like Christmas and stuff like that, which is like not bad in terms of not having to argue about politics and stuff like Thanksgiving, right. But like me telling my like crappy, dirty jokes or whatever it would be is not the best like table talk. I'll just say it.
Yeah, I remember you were talking about the as far as the dirty jokes concerned. You obviously went on ESPN. I just want to get your take on that because listen, I mean, anybody in sports media, I mean, mine for sure. It's definitely my dream to go on ESPN at 5:30 in the morning during a Korean baseball game. It's just I feel like that's got to be the pinnacle right there. But no, seriously, it was awesome. You posted the bit, and it was actually really, really funny. Just talk about that experience, though. Again, I know talking to those guys, they do a great job, but I'm sure that had to be pretty cool for you to get the airtime on ESPN.
Yeah, man, that was like you just said, anybody that like is doing this type of work or kind of career and stuff like that, and I think guys like us that are kind of self-starters and figured out a way to do it in place of doing more like mundane career work, it's a dream.
Actual hard work and manual labor.
That's what I wanted to say. I think that was actually in the bit. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's always been a dream of mine, and I was just very, very fortunate. I've been very fortunate with this job in general. I was a bartender for years and years and years. I literally met my boss and my fiance at that bar. Mm. Like doing this job that I hated, they both just randomly came in and it did two things that obviously changed my life. Mm. But the stuff with SDS, we met Tom Hart, who's a broadcaster on there. Right, and, hilarious dude. And him and I become friends because he lives in Atlanta. So he called me like a couple weeks ago. He's like, "Hey man, do you want to come on and do stand up during like one of the Korean baseball broadcasts?" And I was like, at like 5:30 in the morning? And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, Tom." And I thought he was kidding. Like 1,000% thought he was joking around.
Man. Good joke.
Yeah. So then he like calls me back and was like, "Sorry, I can't do it this week. You got bumped for Tim Kirchin." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so then the following week he followed up, and I just kind of thought it would fall by the wayside and not happen. And they brought me on, and so I was on there for like 20 minutes, and it was like a dream come true to be on ESPN, no matter what time of day it was. And I did like a 2-minute bit about just how I think baseball players in the 20s are trash besides maybe Babe Ruth. And it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Chris, I was going to say, obviously, you're with Saturday Down South again, co-host of the podcast. Just give people that maybe are unfamiliar with you. Again, I don't know how they would be, but because we've shared your stuff, I'm sure all SEC fans getting familiar with you. But just tell people about yourself a little bit. Obviously, you kind of mentioned how you got your start with Saturday Down South, but looking at your Twitter handle, you're the engagement editor. Like I said, you're a graphic design specialist. I know you love the feedback from the audience on your professional graphics you post. But no, seriously, just let people know kind of your story, like when you started with Saturday Down South, kind of what you do now. Again, you guys put out a fantastic product. The social media handles or pages are awesome. The podcast is awesome. Just give people kind of the rundown on what you guys do.
Yeah, man. So basically, I started with SES in 2017. I had done on-camera work and just different stuff, and like I said, stand-up comedy for years and years. And you'll have to excuse me. I apologize. I'm sitting here for work. I'm having to play online poker right now, so that's why there's a distraction. So I started in 2017. Like I said, I met my boss. He came in to Houston's, and like it was like the lamest, whitest thing imaginable. He was like, I heard him say Auburn and Tuscaloosa, and I was like, "You guys talking football over here?" And just like hijacked the conversation, started talking to him, and he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I have a blog." It's like what? Like it's like the lamest thing ever.
That guy.
That guy. And so, I'd started this blog of my own called Winning and Boozing, and it was on a website called Red, White, and Bro. And so the winning and boozing thing I did, I've been doing it for years, and it's like honestly, it's like my baby, it's my favorite thing. Where I did a preview every week, and it's like all satire based and like pretty dirty. Not dirty, it's just like not clean.
Right.
And so and break down the games, and then also talk about what drinks you would have at each tailgate, and the whole thing was just like more comedic and everything like that. And so I told him about it, and he somehow saw it, liked it, and was able to filter through all the F words and thought I would be a good fit. And so I just started part-time with him and doing some stuff, like going on different trips. Actually, when I first started, the first thing I ever did was they sent me to a different campus for the first 3 weeks of football for 3 straight weeks. And I just went out with a camera crew and went to all the downtown, like the best spots downtown, the bars, all that kind of stuff, like restaurants, and then just took in a game weekend in like Athens, Tuscaloosa, and Gainesville. It was probably, as much as I love my job now, it was like the pinnacle of my work ever. It was awesome. It was awesome. So that is kind of transition now into this engagement editor, which is it's just a fancy title for I do social media stuff. I make memes, and I do this the podcast as well. And that's about it. It's a blast, man. It's a lot of fun. I'm not a graphic designer. Our graphic designer moved on to bigger and better things with Fox out in LA, and so now I'm having to do all the graphics. And if you guys missed it, I was the idiot a couple weeks ago that spelled Carolina Carlona. I spelled it wrong twice. Somehow. I literally have a driver's license from that state. My family lives in Lexington. I don't know how I did that.
What was it? The Tails, California, Heads, Carlona?
Heads, Carlona, Tails, California. Oh, my God. I got reamed for that one.
No, dude, what I love, though, and respect about what you guys do and just kind of hearing your story, I mean, I definitely think, talking about your path, and I kind of relate to what I'm doing in the sense of what I love about what you guys do and the content you create is it's not like your traditional, boring, like mundane, and that's no disrespect to anybody who is a journalist or working for a local newspaper or whatever website you're working for. But I definitely think we've seen a shift in media where, I think it's great. I think more people have an opportunity to, if you have a certain talent or you have a personality or you're good on camera, or you're good behind a microphone, or you're good making graphics, or you're good whatever, if you can get creative with it and kind of give it a personality, like I think we're seeing that a lot more take over media. People are using different channels to express that. And I think you guys, especially, like the memes you put out and stuff like that, it's really fun. It's creative. It's unique. And I think it engages the common fan, which is sort of the end goal behind what you do. Because if you don't have their interest, what do you really have in the end? So I would say kudos to you and what you guys do for sure.
I appreciate that, man. I'll be honest. Like when I first started doing it, not in an arrogant way or anything like that, but I know I'm funny, and I know that like I knew I could do the job because like I said, it's just making memes, stuff like that, and trying to make people laugh. But I tell you what, the SEC fan base is like being your demo audience is sometimes tough, and also like I think when I first started, a lot of the like our audience was a little bit older. And so it's just funny. And you know this as well as anybody, jumping from like platform to platform, how you have to kind of like change what the message is or how it's presented, because something that goes well like on Instagram, it's like a younger audience, does not go well on Facebook. Or so it's always funny to me because you'll see stuff and like I always make it a point to say like I'm not a journalist. Like I'm not trying to win a Pulitzer. I'm trying to make people laugh. I'm trying to like, you know, have like a lighter side of things. And it's always funny when you'll post something and you'll go through it and it's like, oh, this is great. And then you see someone who's like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, cool, awesome, thanks, Dad.
People on social media cannot just see something they dislike and just scroll past it and not let it bother the day. It's impossible. It is impossible for that. I mean, what you're saying is funny though, because I, you know, not to make this about me, but I'll have people say like, you know, try to take some jab or whatever about like, oh, he's not a real media source or he's not like a real insider. I'm like, do you realize I have 2 T-shirts that have media and insider in quotation marks? Like it's a joke. I get it. Like I don't want to. You're not trying to be anything you're not. It's like when people ask, I'm like, I'm just me. Like I'm a content creator. That's the way you look. You're a content creator. That's what you do.
I think it was interesting when I first started because I had a real tough time, honestly, until this past year, like kind of teeter-tottering back and forth with what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And a lot of it was like, you know, I get so obsessed with like wanting to be taken seriously because if I say something and people don't like it, it's like, well, obviously he's a comedian or he's a Bama fan. Right. He just, you know, he's a homer. And so I would really stress about like, okay, I need to know all the stats.
You're saying in the beginning, right?
Yeah. Well, like up until like last year. And I had a talk with Chris Doring, who's a guy I met, like, I guess like in my background story, I said I was bartending at Houston's. I was also bartending at the Omni right before I started working at SDS. And then like also part-time when I was working with SDS. And so randomly during March Madness, I ran into Chris Doring and I recognized him. And I think I can share this story. I was like, hey, are you Chris Doring? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh man, my name's Chris. I work for SDS. And I was like very small at the company at that point. And he was like, what do you do? I was like, I run the podcast. He goes, tell you what, I'll just be honest here right now. I had a couple drinks. I hate John Christ, and I'm never coming back on that podcast. And it was the guy that like I had replaced, and I was like, oh, because they had some like back and forth, or, like, you know, they butted heads. They like Florida and Florida State or whatever. And so I ended up hitting it off. It was funny because they had me in this little sidebar, and they didn't give me a way to like collect money. Right. So I'm just handing out free drinks all night. So Doring thinks I'm like hooking him up the whole time, and we hit it off, and he ended up being like super helpful in like getting my start and stuff like that, and being available for interviews. But one of the things he told me was like, you have to like pick an identity almost. Like, you know, I really enjoy like having all like the boxes checked and knowing all the stats and all that kind of stuff and feeling like I'm a credible source. But I tell you what, like you said earlier, I think there's a lot of people that like want to consume stuff from people they can relate to and not just somebody spouting out numbers. And I think he told me at the beginning of this year, is like, you got to make a you know, pick a side. Like, you want to be like Pat Mack, or do you want to be like, you know, just another guy like crunching numbers and stuff like that. And so,
yeah, no, I think definitely. I think you've got to find your niche, find your lane, and really just get after it in that regard. I would say, like I said, getting back to you're a content creator. One of the best pieces of content you ever made, man, I'm sure it did well, was when you called me a bearded tomato. If you didn't notice, I'm wearing the exact same tank top that I was wearing that day. I was thinking about this too earlier. I promise we're going to get into football in just a second, but I was thinking about this too earlier. That aren't you so glad that I like wasn't one of those people that takes everything just so seriously and like, I mean, because it could have been the other way. I thought you were
going to beat the shit out of me. When
it could have been the other way.
Like, this dude's going to jump me, and like, because we talked beforehand about meeting up at the Bama game.
That's right. Oh, it was before that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, so, anyway, if you don't know the story, basically, you're still saved in my phone as bearded tomato. Like when I talk about like, you know, like talking about working on stuff or coming on the radio with you or podcast or working on memes and stuff, and I'll tell my fiance, and she's like, "Oh, is that bearded tomato?" Like, and like, it's all out of love too. But when last year, the first week of the season, obviously, when South Carolina had a tough lost
to UNC, yeah,
and you posted this video. And so I was doing this video series called like College Football Uncensored, where we'd go around the internet and find like the funniest stuff from the weekend. And I think my boss sent me that video, and it was just you going Firewall Muschamp, and you had this like beet red sunburn.
Oh yeah.
And and then like I think what you said like actually goes a long way, because people are so quick to get defensive online, and that could have easily spiraled out of control. But I'm glad it worked out well for us.
Yeah, trust me, I still see it every now and then on social media of like, oh, is that lobster boy talk? Like people that don't like me. I'm like, dude, I'll take the L. I honestly did not tan last summer at all. Worked on a golf course most of the time. Did not tan last summer. I was pale. I underestimated. I thought I was tougher in the sun. And indeed I was not. So, anyways, let's move into football. Obviously, that's why we brought you on, Marler. Let's move into college football, and I want to talk to you about first just the SEC as a whole. It's still early on, so I want to knock on wood when I say this, but how impressed have you been with the way that, obviously all these different rules and all these different systems were set in place, if you will, to make sure that these student athletes are taken care of. They're going to stay healthy. They're going to do all they can at least to keep them as healthy as possible. But I feel like the SEC has crushed it. I mean, again, knock on wood. There really haven't been hardly any cases, if any at all. Just talk about your thoughts on what the SEC's been doing, and I guess really how happy and relieved you are, because I mean we're all sitting here with our fingers crossed that everything's going to go smoothly. We're going to get to September 26th. We're going to have kickoff, and we're going to be all good. I mean, how impressed, I guess, have you been, and how relieved have you been that everything has gone up to plan up to this point at least?
Really impressed. And I'm somebody that's been kind of critical of Greg Sankey for stuff that's petty, like the way he did the schedule reveal and not the full schedule reveal, but when they came out with the 2 added teams, that news dump on a Friday afternoon, I was like, what? And
ridiculous.
I was not thrilled with that. Right. And at the time, I remember kind of going in on him about how the Pac-12 has a schedule already. The Big Ten, the Big Ten already has a schedule out. I think the ACC had already come out with theirs. And it kind of felt like the SEC was lagging behind. And just me being a typical member of the media and overreacting to something before I had, let it marinate. And I can admit that. That's exactly what happened in this case. Greg Sankey's done a phenomenal job. And it's easy to say that, I think, as a fan or somebody that covers this league now, especially because you have something to compare it to with what we've seen with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 especially. But, this is something I kept saying to you, but like while it was happening, the Big Ten really thought that they were going to, in the same way, because I think not a lot of people know this, but all 5 of the Power 5 conferences were working together in the offseason to have like a universal scheduling system to where they had like the same amount of games and it was kind of fair and all that kind of stuff. And the Big Ten went rogue and announced they're going to do conference-only schedule. And I think it kind of gave them this false bravado, and they thought that we're going to do something and everyone else is going to follow. They're going to follow our lead for whatever reason. And they did the same thing with canceling the season. And it's been such a horrible look for the conference. And not just because people want to see football. I obviously get like the safety part of it, and there's kids' health and all that kind of stuff, and all that's really important. But when you see what Kevin Warren does, there's no communication, and he decides to cancel the season like on the heels of a week before having this big reveal of their schedule, and then canceling the season. And of course, their lapdogs, the Pac-12 does the same exact thing, and then you come to find out later in the week they used whatever report they used was completely inaccurate. And it's just like it's a horrible and like it's the worst possible like scenario that played out. And then you look at Greg Sankey just sitting back here and they asked him how did you avoid this? And he said, everything we've learned about COVID is a wait and see approach. We learn more and more every day about it. Why would you not just wait to see what happens?
Well, especially when kickoff's not so it's so far out. You still have time. And yeah, I definitely think taking the wait and see approach is a lot better. Let things unfold, let them evolve. What I've thought's been so crazy with the Big Ten, because I agree with you, they look terrible. I mean, they're having students on campus and they're having intramural sports. They can't have college football. It makes absolutely no sense. Again, safety's first and everything, but I agree with you. I think the SEC has done a phenomenal job. We saw NC State; they pushed their opener back. I mean, I feel like these conferences, ACC, SEC, and Big 12, listen, none of them have thought, and I thought Scott Frost said it best. I thought he had some of the best perspective on the entire pandemic. He said, listen, if our goal is to have 0 student athletes get COVID, we're going to fail at that whether we play or we don't. So, I mean, the student athletes, I know everybody loves to make the argument, oh, they should be paid. Oh, my God, they're getting exploited. And listen, there's an argument they should be paid. I'm not saying that. But can you also acknowledge they are treated like kings? I mean, the way they're taken care of versus the normal student with the facilities they're in, the people watching over them, the medical staffs that are at their availability, you're doing them a disservice taking them away from that necessarily. And I think, I don't know, maybe you can enlighten me on this. I know for a while the Big Ten was still practicing, but they're not going to play? Like,
so that went on for like I think a couple of days at most,
Right.
because I think there's still a general feeling that they're going to reverse this
they're going to
decision.
change their minds, right?
Yeah, and again, like when you really unwrap everything that's happening with the Big Ten, when you find out that they talk about doing the spring football season, and at the core of this whole argument of, well, it's player safety. And what really pissed me off, and I get fired up easily, especially with the Big Ten, because I've always thought that conference was a joke. I've always called it the Big Three since I was like 8 years old. It's Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State.
Right.
It's nothing else. I get that Wisconsin and Minnesota like dip their big toe in like the deep end of like the big boy pool every now and then,
Right.
but it's never anything that's like substantial. So when you hear that they're going to have this whole thing because of player safety, and they did take this very arrogant, like looking down their nose at the SEC of, well, we
Right.
care about, our players and our student athletes. And then you hear like the media that's associated with the Big Ten saying like I think, I can't remember her name, and I love her to death. She's a great follow on Twitter, but she posted Elika Siddiqui. She's used to be with Fox, and she posted something about how she would trust the doctors, and medical experts from the Big Ten, Stanford and, Michigan, all this other stuff. And again, we find out that those numbers weren't real. And on top of that, you talk about player safety, and you're going to have 2 seasons in a 10-month span. And then you're telling me that, like, it blows my mind. And the argument you brought up is a great one about, for forever, we've talked about how college athletes and football players specifically, if you go to a school, like, especially if it's like it's a big football school, they always get preferential treatment, And then all of a sudden, this time that's just thrown out the window. And I've never understood that. I've never understood why that's been the case. It makes no sense, really. And I think it boils down to basically the universities. If you're going to open campus for regular students, you're opening yourself up for a lot of potential issues. And they did that because they wanted to collect tuition checks.
Yeah,
and as soon as that's done, they're going to send these kids home and make them, do online virtual classes and all that kind of shit, because they don't care about, like, it's the same thing with the NCAA. I don't want to get on a high horse about this or a soapbox, but
Right.
none of these people that are in power really, truly, in my opinion, care about the student athlete. Like Kevin Warren, his son.
It's a business. It's a business. At the end of the day. It's a business,
right? And so, but don't tell me that you had the best interest in mind for these student athletes when you talk about this. Like, we're gonna have a spring season, and you get all the 12 or all the 14 ADs from the Big Ten on a conference call, and it's the first time that conversation's even been had from any level. Like, that makes absolutely no sense that level of communication is so bad. Then you want to like sit here and hide behind this facade of, well, we care about our student athletes. No, you don't. You care about the bottom line. You care about, like, the almighty dollar. And as soon as those kids, like, as soon as they get those tuition checks, they can't get reimbursed, they are going to send everyone home, guaranteed.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I've talked about that a bunch too. It's just, unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're looked at as a number. I mean, like you said, I think these schools, they realized, hey, we know the risks, but we need to justify charging full tuition. So if we can bring them back, show face, hey, we tried. Oh well,
this is your fault.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Those checks of cash, too bad. So you're going to take what you can get for sure. I want to move on the field, Marler. Let's get to it. You're a noted Alabama fan. You're an Alabama guy for sure. Let's start with the SEC West, because I think this might get you going a little bit. I saw an article yesterday. You guys may have even posted it. Texas A&M's getting a lot of love right now.
Yeah.
A lot of love. And they're on South Carolina schedule. Obviously, Gamecocks have lost 6 straight to them. But A&M's getting a lot of love. And this is kind of – I want your take on the entire SEC West race. Yeah. But Reese Davis has Texas A&M ranked 4th. And then I talked to your buddy Michael Bratton, SEC Mike. He's got Texas A&M winning the West. What's your overall take on the West as a whole? And then just – I mean, do you think – listen, I think A&M with Jimbo Fisher, I mean, they have the facilities, they have the talent. Maybe this is the year. Maybe they're this year's LSU and it all comes together. But what's your thoughts on the love they're getting this preseason?
First off, I love Mike.
He's not afraid of the bold take. I think he was the one that said last year South Carolina was going to win 10 games, and I told him, I was like, hey, I love that optimism. Thank you for that. But, whatever.
and Mike is like, it's always funny too, because, like, again, like, this is all coming from a place of love. Mike is one of my favorite people. He's a great follow. He's a guy that I honestly butted heads with when I first started, because he's so sarcastic and and he's hilarious. He's hilarious, and he knows his shit. Like honestly, better than me and better than anyone else we work with at SDS. And so when we first started like having like back and forth, I was like, this guy is an a-hole, and he's constantly saying these things that are so outrageous, and it gets under people's skin. But he can back it up with like actual things a lot of times, like with his knowledge of the game. So that being said, Mike also said Bama's going to lose 3 or 4 games this year. I don't see that happening. I think I get a lot of flack because I'm a Bama homer or whatever, and like people are very quick to forget that I picked Clemson to beat Bama as early as October in 2018. I think that the stuff with like the hype with A&M, I think is real. I think it was more real before the schedule change. And when you look at a 12-game schedule and Clemson's not on it and Georgia's not on it, especially 2 games on the road, I loved A&M in the top 10, especially. I still do like them in the top 10. They returned 17 starters. Kellen Mond's in year 3 at Jimbo Fisher. I think it's for whatever reason, Kellen Mond and A&M are so polarizing to SEC fans that I don't really understand why, because people just do not want to give that kid credit that, he's going to be a disappointment. I'll tell you what.
I've given him the benefit of the doubt since he threw for like 400 against Clemson. People come at me because they're like, dude, he's so overrated. I'm like, that game to me, like I'm like, he's a gamer, bro. Like he is a gamer. That's what I feel like about him.
I agree, and he's had his struggles for sure, and I think he kind of regressed a little bit last year. But I tell you what, like it's easy to sit here and say from 30,000 feet, like looking down this whole thing. I tell you what, he regressed. His numbers weren't as good as they were as a sophomore. He's obviously overrated. He's not the hype's not worth it, all that kind of stuff. At Clemson, Bama at home, at LSU, at Georgia. And I'm forgetting somebody that was also a top 10 team. I don't know how. But, I mean, that schedule last year was ridiculous. Yeah. And they don't have to face those teams again. So going 7-5 with that schedule, it's like kind of what I said with South Carolina last year to an extent is where is the ceiling and where are your expectations? And are they lining up? And I think with Texas A&M, I think they're going to be a very good team. I've said before the season, and honestly, I don't know how I feel about it now because of the way the schedule's set up. But I think going into November, Kellen Mond will be in position to be a Heisman finalist. And I'm not saying he will be by the time December rolls around, but especially before they added these games from the conference-only schedule, the way that schedule lined up, they could easily have been 10-0 going into their last 2 games, which were LSU and Bama. I think, again, year 3 of Jimbo, returning all of those starters, and then also having people around him with experience. He lost a couple of go-to guys at receiver, but he also returns, a lot of talent at the skill positions around him. And what no one's talking about, you think about how big this was a couple of years ago with Jay Sorensen, the tight end. The kid they have coming in, Baylor Cupp, who's like the number 1 tight end in the country 2 years ago, he's coming off an injury. He was so missed last year, even as a true freshman, so he's out for the entire season. I think Kellen Mond, when you look at his body of work and being the only quarterback in the SEC to average 3,500 total yards, 30 touchdowns over 2 seasons.
Most veteran quarterback, too. He's a veteran.
He is – everyone wants to hit on him. He is already in the top 20 all-time in the SEC in total touchdowns, total passing yards, and I think maybe one more stat. But I think Kellen Mond is going to be a lot better this year, and I'm not up there with Reese Davis. I don't know what that is, top 4 at all. I don't think they're going to win the SEC West, but I do think it's a team that's going to win 8 games.
Do you think – because I'm assuming you have Alabama winning the West, correct?
Yes.
Do you think they are their biggest challenger, or would it come from Auburn or LSU?
So that's also a good question. I think I would say it's probably somebody like Auburn. That game against Auburn, they threw it in at the very end of the season. That didn't do Auburn or A&M any favors because you get Bama early, and they usually play Bama pretty early in the season. And it's one of those things ever since 2012 where both teams I feel like kind of have that one circled a little bit. Going into the way the schedule is now, they close the season, and I'm trying to think. I don't have it in front of me either, but they close the season. I know Bama plays Auburn in like week 10, so like the second to last game. The following week, Auburn plays A&M, and that is such a pivotal matchup to figure out like how everything falls in place in the SEC West, like in terms of standings. I did not do either one of those teams any favors by putting it last. I think Auburn will be a little bit more of I don't want to say a test, but a little bit a better barometer for where A&M is going to be this season. Because whether you like it or not, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Bama fan, I bring that up just so, I always say it's like one of my many flaws, but I am as objective as possible with it. those games against Bama haven't really been that close outside of the Manziel years. There was one a couple years ago that I think was an 8-point win or something like that. But like other than that, they haven't really ever been close in those games. And I think a team like Auburn, especially since it's on the road in Jordan-Hare, it's gonna be a lot more difficult for A&M.
Yeah, just to compare, Alabama closed the season against Arkansas, so I would certainly take that matchup over the A&M matchup for sure. And I will say this: I'm picking Alabama in the West as well, and people might go with, "Oh, it's boring." A&M, you don't get rich betting against Nick Saban in Alabama. A wise man once told me, "You're not going to get rich betting against Alabama." So I'm going Alabama as well. About to move off the SEC West, but I'll ask you really quickly: 2 new head coaches, 2 new very intriguing head coaches with Leach at Mississippi State and Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Obviously, Ole Miss on South Carolina's schedule. Who do you think has more success in year one, Leach or Kiffin?
In year one, I think it's going to be Ole Miss. I think just the way their schedule sets up. And honestly, looking at Vegas, these win totals, some of the best advice I've ever received. My dad, he said, they didn't build these $1 billion hotels and casinos in the middle of the desert out of nothing. And so when you look at that, and they're both their team win total is only 4. Mm-hmm. But when you look at like the actual odds and where like the juice is, I think it's even money for Ole Miss. It's like -115 for both. And you look at Mississippi State, for them to cover 4 wins this season, I think it's like +160. So the money's not in your favor. Mm. I think that in year one, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, he's got a little bit more talent returning, a little bit more in place, especially with what he likes to do on offense. I think he will have a better, more consistent year one in regards to what their expectations are at Ole Miss. I think Mississippi State in year one is going to have a win like South Carolina had last year. I think they are, out of any team in the SEC, they are the most like ripe that like and poised to jump up and bite somebody when they're least expecting it. They get Georgia, they get Bama, obviously they get LSU and everyone else in the SEC West. KJ Costello is a really good quarterback, and with that Mike Leach offense, we've seen it 1,000 times. Like his record against top 25 teams, top 10 teams is abysmal overall, but he always seems to get one, like every couple of years or so.
Hey, at LSU week 1, never know. They're breaking in a whole new team. You never know.
Yeah, really.
Moving over to the East, I know we've talked about this before. Again, Florida, it seems like, has been the sexy pick all offseason, but now you look at the Gators' schedule, what they added, it does not do them any favors. It feels like the SEC was trying to almost throw the alley-oop up to Georgia, Alabama. I mean, when you see who Georgia added, Arkansas, Mississippi
State. They play each other.
I mean, come on. Yeah, ridiculous.
I love when people say that, and I get the sentiment, and this is something that we keep trying to harp on over and over and over again because first off, that's already built in. Okay?
Right.
Like everyone always would say, like, Bama doesn't play anybody, all that kind of stuff. And I'll give you the best example out of this whole thing. 2016, right? Bama opens with USC. They beat them 52-6. USC finishes the year, wins the Rose Bowl, finishes number 3 in the country. Bama never plays anybody. They played them when they were unranked. Yeah. The following season, they open up with Florida State. Florida State's ranked number 3 in the country. It's the biggest preseason or biggest week 1 game of all time. Bama beats them 24-7, ruins Francois' life, and the rest of that season, they're done. Florida State finishes the season unranked. You have a team that they beat when they were unranked that finished 3rd, followed by, like literally sandwich back-to-back, a team that was started ranked number 3 and then finished unranked. And all we ever hear is, well, they don't play anybody.
Right.
So I think when you look at the picture as a whole, everyone wants to talk about how, the SEC kind of gave, Bama some cupcakes and there's no marquee matchup because everyone wanted to see that Bama-Florida matchup. The highest ranked matchup in the SEC for the entire season is Bama-Georgia. That's already on the schedule.
Right.
So when you look at it, the schedule as a whole, like who else could they have added? And I think –
well, no, and I agree. I think everybody's schedule is hard this year. I mean, listen, I'm someone, I can say this, and listen, Gamecock fans might not like that I'm saying this, but I'm even someone as a South Carolina fan that, listen, we know the ACC sucks, but I get so tired of hearing about Clemson's schedule. It's like, bro, they are a good football team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care who they play. They're really, really, really good. I had a buddy of mine the other day, and again, I hate Clemson with every fiber of my being, but he was trying to justify, even if Clemson goes undefeated, they shouldn't be in the college football playoff. And I'm like, dude, come on. Look at the players on their roster. Like,
man.
You have to be able to look. You have to be able to look a little bit deeper. So, I mean, I hate Georgia, so that's probably why I'm saying that. But I agree with you. Everybody's schedule. I mean, you're pretty much playing everybody in the conference anyway.
Right. I mean, there's 13
you can't hide.
possible
You
games
can't hide
you
this year.
Right.
You can't hide this year. 13
possible teams you could have played, and you're playing 10 of them. And I tell you what, this is people don't want to hear this, but I'm right about this, and I don't care how that sounds. People don't want to see Bama play somebody. They want to see Alabama lose. And that's just like, once we can all start admitting that, I think, there is something to be said for, I said the SEC would do this early on. Like, as soon as I heard the rumors about Bama, Florida, I was like, there's no way the SEC is going to make their road to the college football playoff more difficult, especially in a year like this, by putting two of their contenders in an unnecessary game against each other. Like, there's just no way they would do that. And the Big Ten did the exact same thing, and I get it, because, again, like, the bottom line is money and get people to the playoff. Either way, we're going to have an incredible season for football. I think when you look at Florida, and I will say that I know Florida was kind of at the forefront of why that schedule took so long to come out, because they were not happy with the possibility of playing someone like Alabama. Florida's schedule, I wasn't really buying into Florida before that happened, just because, listen, what Dan Mullen's done the first two seasons, I don't know why we're not talking about it enough, because he's had 21 wins, 2 New Year's Six bowl games. 21 wins in 2 seasons. That's incredible. It's just incredible, especially with what he inherited from Jim McElwain. Florida, to me, I love what Kyle Trask was able to do as a game manager like the year before. They have a lot of talent returning. They got a couple of new guys at receiver. I think they're really going to really impress and be some of the elite receivers in the entire conference throughout the country. I don't see how they beat Georgia. And I know, and I'm not just saying that because, well, it's been 3 years. Georgia fans love to bring that up on social media. Georgia lost 21 of 30 games to Florida in a 30-year stretch in my lifetime. And they won 3 in a row. And it's like,
all of a sudden.
Can't beat us, bro. Can't beat Kirby.
All of a sudden.
But right? So I will say, I think you still have to get by Georgia to win this division. I honestly think South Carolina has a really good chance. I wish that game was not being played in the Swamp. I wish it was being played in Williams-Brice. But I think South Carolina has a really good chance to upset a team like Florida and maybe sneak in to finish in second or third in that division. I hate to be bland, and I hate to have the same predictions as everyone else, but that Georgia defense, I think, is going to be the best defense that we've seen in college football in the past decade. And statistically speaking, if they don't give up 20 points, and I'm looking at that schedule, they do play Bama, who has a very high-powered offense. Who else scores 20 to 25 points on that team?
Yeah, I mean, it took a defensive pick six and a couple of fortuitous bounces for everything for South Carolina to hit 20 last year against Georgia. So, I mean, when you think about that, for sure. No, I mean, listen, like I said, it's the boring pick, but listen, I think Georgia and Bama are in a league of their own, so that's who I'm picking. I'll tell you this. I think, actually, I've got Georgia winning the SEC.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I'm saying that, because it's one of those things where I'm like, you feel like until Georgia – and listen, I mean, Nick Saban's never lost an assistant. That's a thing people love to bring up. It's it's almost like until it happens, why would you pick it? But it's like you're saying, man, like if that Georgia offense clicks they've got Jamie Newman and JT Daniels to pick from.
And George Pickens.
Yeah, and you're saying, and that defense is going to be unbelievable. I mean, if it doesn't happen this year, I don't know that it ever will. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it.
That's fair, I think. I said this last year. I picked Georgia to beat Bama at the beginning of last season. I said at the beginning of last year I didn't think they would win the national championship because I thought Clemson was too good. But I thought that in 2020 Georgia would win the national championship, and it felt like it was coming. I think losing 9 starters on offense is difficult. I mean, it's very difficult. And you have, the biggest issue, and people just love to hate on Saban about this, is the continuity as a staff. That's the biggest kind of thing that Kirby Smart's going to have to manage as a coach, because it's tough to replace an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator, and then those assistants and those guys that are also good recruiters and all that kind of stuff, and like losing a guy like Sam Pittman on top of losing 9 starters. But Jake Fromm is, I mean, I don't know how PC we have to be on this show, but he is
go ahead.
The most underwhelming fucking quarterback I've seen in the SEC. Like a hand job on a honeymoon, level of underwhelming. It is unbelievable how mediocre he was. I think anybody they bring in, either of these guys is an upgrade from Jake Fromm. And he took that team to a national championship. But if you are somebody that is, I don't think he should have lost his job to Justin Fields. But if you're a Georgia fan and you look at Justin Fields being a Heisman finalist, throwing 40 touchdowns and 1 interception, and then you look at what you had, this balding 20-year-old who's throwing out racial epithets on Twitter apparently now, it's going almost undrafted by the Bills. I think that they're going to have an upgrade there. And I said this about Bama. This is when you could kind of start seeing things change when Saban first got to Tuscaloosa. And it's exactly what's happening in Athens. Is you're not only getting these 5-star guys, these 4-star guys, and it's obviously made a difference, right? Like Georgia's starting out in the top 5 in the preseason poll for the third straight year under Kirby Smart. Before he got there, they'd only done that 3 times in their program history, right? So he's been able to bring in a lot of elite recruits and elite talent, and it's obviously showed, especially on defense, where he has his hand over that defense all the time, and they've been lights out. They've been absolutely lights out. They gave up 2 rushing touchdowns all last year, neither one of them to a running back. And they didn't give up one until November when they played Auburn. So
crazy.
I think that when you look at JT Daniels, or I'd say he's the starter. I think Newman will be, but if Daniels as a 5-star quarterback throwing to the number 1 receiver coming out of high school, George Pickens, and then handing off to the number 1 running back in the country, Zamir White, coming out of high school, and he's being blocked for on his blind side by the number 1 offensive tackle, and like just 5 stars everywhere. It's crazy. And then you look at the other side of that on defense, and you're like, this defensive end was the number 1 JUCO player in the country. Yeah. The other guy was the number 1 high school player in the country. I mean, they had 5 kids that were not just the number 1 player at their position, but the number 1 player in their state as well. To recruiting cycles ago. It's just what he's doing. It's gonna pay off. I don't know if it's this year because Bama's gonna be, I think, scary again. And I think they're gonna they return 9 of 10 coaches, which I think is a huge deal. And when you look at that defense, what happened last year, I know what happened against Auburn. I know what happened against LSU. Man, they had 6 starters out going to the last game. And I think if they can stay healthy, they could beat Georgia, but I wouldn't bet on Bama beating Georgia twice. I like that pick.
Let's move into South Carolina, Marler. Again, we're talking SEC East, but let's talk about the Gamecocks, obviously, because I know everybody's very intrigued to get your take on it. I put out a graphic actually today, and my thoughts on the season. Listen, we all know the lead storyline. You can't get around it, is Will Muschamp. And how does the pandemic affect his job status and a lot of coaches that are on the hot seat? I don't know. But either way, what I tell people, even if he, whatever, even if the pandemic affects everything, this is a pivotal year. It's a pivotal year just showing for the state of the program, the progress the program is making. I put out a graphic on social media today, and basically just a quote from my own show, humble brag, that 5-5 to me, that's the minimum expectation. And I think that's what going 500 or better, even with this schedule, even losing Marshawn Lloyd, which you don't have to be a South Carolina fan, just a college football fan is devastating.
That sucks. From Delaware.
But with the talent South Carolina has in this roster, and if you look at their recruiting classes, they've recruited at pretty much a top 20 clip the last 5-6 years, whatever. I think that 500 needs to be the minimum expectation. I don't think you can call this year a success if you have a losing record. Do you think that is a fair analysis? Again, I know you lose Marshawn Lloyd. There's tons of questions on offense. You're breaking in Mike Bobo, but I just truly do believe that in year 5, that should be the expectation, at least 5-5 or better.
Man, I just don't know why you hate South Carolina so much and why you want them to lose. I don't get it.
I'm definitely because them going 10-0 would make my life much harder.
Yeah, for real. No, I mean, I'm obviously kidding when I said I think that is where the expectation should be. And I tell you what, this is always kind of like a double-edged sword for me because, and I hate to keep saying this, but this is just where I come from in terms of being a fan. Like I sat through the shitty Bama years with all the mics with Dubose and Shula and Price for a minute and all that kind of stuff. And like there has to be a reasonable expectation like set. And like going into last season, when you looked at that schedule, I mean, that was daunting as it could get. And I think what Will Muschamp didn't do a really good job of on a whole is winning the games he has to win and taking care of business. Like it's awesome. They beat Georgia. It's, I mean, an incredible upset. Are people going to remember that in the same way if they would have, if Carolina finished 7-6 and went to a bowl game, or 7-5, if they wouldn't have lost to UNC and App State and all that kind of stuff? Like in a season where he broke a 5-year streak to Kentucky and upset Georgia, the number 3 team in the country, we're still asking questions about his job. And I think it's fair. I really do. The way the pandemic is going to affect it, I talked to you about this a couple times off air. I hate it. I hate it for the fans because it's like you're in this weird this weird purgatory of what you're allowed to think. Like because there should be an excuse almost like that, but it's going to be way more difficult to have a good year on a year where he was going to be on the hot seat for sure. Does that mean that we have to accept going – Right. I saw you put out yesterday them going 1-4. Do we have to accept start the season 1-4? Like I think what he's been able to do on the recruiting trail has been awesome. And I think they're going to have one of the best and most improved defenses in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree.
But, man, if you can't beat Kentucky, that week one, if
Tennessee,
you can't go beat Tennessee.
I said that's the most important game of the season. It will set the tone for everything else that happens.
I agree. I mean, Absolutely. I agree.
Like in my opinion, if you're going to get, not to cut you off, but if you're going to get to 5 wins or more, that's one of them you got to win. You have to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that kind of stuff is there's a lot that his feet are kind of held to the fire, and he's had a tough run of it. And following Steve Spurrier at South Carolina is no easy feat. But at the same time, man, you still have to hold him accountable, because if you are – it's unacceptable for South Carolina to lose 5 straight years to Kentucky.
Yeah.
And it just – I think that he has to find a way to win those games. Like, you can't find yourself behind your in-state rival Clemson, because they separated themselves so quickly. I remember like yesterday when they won 5 in a row and Spurrier's up on stage with Kenny Chesney or whatever, the Colonial Life Center, doing all this, talking shit to all the Clemson fans. And now, I think – they've separated themselves, Florida, and so has Georgia. They have to find a way to win early and get that mindset. And I think that kind of culture is what he has to start really changing in South Carolina, is this whole thing about mediocrity and like, it's okay if we are only 5-5. That's where it's got to change.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's like you were saying, just looking back at last year. I mean, you beat Georgia, but you lose to UNC and App State. I mean, App State, I give credit all the credit to the Mountaineers, but you lost to App State at home on senior night. That's the one. It's like I can't get past that.
Yeah.
Like you said, I've got South Carolina starting out 1-4. Obviously, with this show coming out, I'm giving out my predictions for the second half of the season. So, Marler, I've got South Carolina 3-7 for my prediction. Listen, and a little bit of it is because I picked South Carolina to go 7-5 last year, and it's one of those things where I'd rather be wrong on the other side. So, I'd rather be wrong and South Carolina win 5 or more games than pick this team to go 6-4 and underachieve, if that makes sense. I mean, just gun to head, I know you may not even have it pulled up in front of you. Like, what's your thoughts on this sketch? Because, again, what I talked about with those first 5, because, of course, there were fans upset at that. There were fans that were not happy about that prediction. They're not going to be happy about these predictions at all. But South Carolina could be a pretty decent team in those first 5, and it's a gauntlet. I mean, Tennessee at home, that's a swing game, but at Florida in the Swamp, Auburn is a really good team. At LSU, I mean, come on. And you go through Texas A&M, who you haven't beaten. You've lost to them 6 times in a row. And I'll tell you this, Marler, I almost liked the old schedule more, because I think it gave South Carolina, breaking in a new offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo. Hell, you might have – I'm one that honestly thinks I feel like the longer this quarterback battle goes on, I think there's a great chance Colin Hill is your starter. Like, I really, really do. I think there's a very good possibility of that happening. Now you lose Marshawn Lloyd. So it's already an offense without a ton of playmakers. You lose him as well. You're going to be breaking in this offense. There's going to be some sort of an adjustment period early on in the season. You're going to have to lean on your defense, and I think they'll be very good. But, again, what I liked about their old schedule was you had a couple of weeks, with Coastal and then ECU and then Missouri, who's breaking in a brand-new head coach. You could have started 3-0, and you probably should have started 3-0. Now with this schedule, though, what I hate, Marler, is you've got at Ole Miss late in the year after Lane Kiffin's had time to get the thing going. You've got Missouri late in the year, who, by the way, Missouri's head coach, Eli Drinkwitz, he beat you with App State last year.
Right.
You don't think he's got better talent at Missouri? So, I mean, even I'm picking those games as wins, and they terrify me. And then you've got Georgia, who, listen – that upset was awesome last year. I mean, one of the best I'd say the biggest upset win in school history. Georgia's going to be on a mission. It's the second to last week of the season. They're going to know what's at stake. There's no way you're beating them again, in my opinion. Maybe it'll be a close game, but I think Georgia will come in for revenge, and I think they'll get it. And then at Kentucky, Marlon, I don't know if you've ever sat down and looked at the history of that South Carolina. Maybe you're just bored on a rainy day and looked at South Carolina Kentucky football results going back to the 90s. But
those are my favorite bedtime stories.
Oh, for sure. But if you look back, every time South Carolina's played in Lexington, even when South Carolina's beaten Kentucky every year, those games have come down to the wire. And listen, right now, if you asked Vegas, Kentucky's no doubt undoubtedly favored in that game. And they're more than likely going to be favored in that game when you play them in Lexington. So, I mean, the way the schedule sets up, it stinks. Like I said, I liked the old schedule before. But listen, I've got 3-7, and that's not going to make many fans very happy. I would be upset. And I say that, and also saying the minimum expectation, I see a path to 5 wins. I see a path to 6 wins possibly. What's your overall take? Again, I've got 3-7 for the record. I mean, gun to head, what are you thinking for this team?
So Vegas has it at 3.5. I think the latest.
And I think that's the perfect number. I really do.
I mean,
I think it's right on.
I like South Carolina a little bit better, than I think you might. And you obviously are like a realistic fan a lot of times, and like I wouldn't say pessimistic. I would say realistic. I tell you what, when you look at the beginning of this schedule, you're spot on with saying what like it would have done this team so much more. Yeah. It would have made, I think, the season so much easier. Like the transition with the new coaches and quarterback and all that kind of stuff, so much easier if you did have that start where you go 3-0.
Build some confidence, you know what I mean? Get things rolling. Yeah,
exactly. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. That also being said, you're not going to beat LSU in my opinion. I don't think you're going to beat Florida on the road. Mm-hmm. Vandy, Tennessee, and Auburn are all very winnable games. I think that for whatever reason, people are looking at this Auburn team. I've seen it all offseason, and this is not because I'm a Bama fan. I think Bo Nix is obviously going to take some steps forward, but they lost not just important starters on defense. They lost 7 or 8 starters on defense overall. They lost generational type talent on the defensive line that is irreplaceable. Like Derek Brown's not coming back. Marlon Davidson's not coming back. Yeah. They lost 3 or 4 in the secondary, including a first rounder at cornerback. Auburn that's a very winnable game. That's a very winnable game at home, especially. Mm-hmm. I think that I'm trying to look at it right now as I say it. They have Arkansas before, so it's not like you're going to catch them, really napping them or anything like that. But I do think that that's a winnable game, and if you can somehow get that first half of the season, I think they'll have at least 2 wins. I think they'll knock off Auburn or they'll knock off Tennessee in week 1. They knock off Tennessee, they could easily be 3-2. And I think when you look at the back half of that schedule, I hope this isn't really – I don't think this is a hot take. I don't think you're going to beat A&M, and I don't think you're going to beat Georgia on the road.
Right.
Every one of those other games is a winnable game. I'm sorry, I know the Georgia game's at home, and so is A&M. But Mark Stoops, I don't think this is a hot take. Mark Stoops is a better coach than Will Muschamp.
And you know what's funny about that? Because I said that this offseason. The quote was, it's probably the way I worded it. I said, Mark Stoops is everything Will Muschamp is not. So you can imagine people took that really well. But I agree with you. To me, Mark Stoops, they're the opposite in the sense Mark Stoops does more with less and Will Muschamp does less with more. Look at the recruiting classes. You can't argue any differently.
We had Stoops on the podcast, this year and the year before, and especially going into last season. I remember we were talking to him, and he got super fired up. He's an awesome dude. Awesome dude. We love Coach Stoops and what he's able to do at Kentucky because that's a program that's had a ceiling over their head for their entire existence, right? Mm-hmm. And a proud fan base, all that kind of stuff. But he has gone just under the radar with it's incredible what he's been able to do at a place like Kentucky. It's not just because of that like they're over in the shadows of the basketball program, whatever. It's because of the recruiting. Like that's not really outside of Youngstown and in parts of Ohio. There's not like a really fertile recruiting bed, to go pick up talent or anything like that. Mark Stoops said at the beginning of last season, we were like, you got to replace Josh Allen and so and Benny Snell, and he got so pissed and was like, he's like, you know what? You guys didn't even know who those players were going into last season, and no one did. And nobody's bringing it up. And so now all of a sudden you're like, well, how are you going to replace them? You guys didn't know the names of them the year before. You don't know the names of the guys we have now. Like he's like, I like our guys. I like where we're headed. I think that game is, if it comes down to winning to get into a bowl, I think Kentucky is a lot better than people think. Like I said earlier in the broadcast, I think that South Carolina could sneak up into that top 2 or 3 with Kentucky. Like I think that they have a really good chance of upsetting a lot of teams and really like surprising some people. I think they lose that game. I think they lose Georgia, but I think they can get to 5 wins, right? I think that if they can have the 2 definite wins, when I said Tennessee and Vandy or Auburn and Vandy, and maybe an upset early on, and then you have like the latter half of the season when you have Mizzou and Ole Miss, those are very winnable games. Like Ole Miss is not, they're not world beaters.
Right.
South
No,
Carolina
for sure.
Team.
And I've got that one as a win because I've got that one as a win.
So I love the over. I love them getting to at least 4 wins, at least. But I think this is a team, especially if they can figure out a way to win, just beat Auburn or Kentucky. There's a very good chance they can get to 5 wins and I guess be bowl eligible. I don't even know how it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, who knows with the bowl system. I'll tell you this. You already touched on the defense, and I agree with you. I think the South Carolina defense should be by far Will Muschamp's best. I think it should be a top half of the league defense. I don't think that's asking for too much at all. To me, and the reason that I picked South Carolina to start 1-4, you look, I put scores in there as well because I agree with you on Auburn. I picked that as a 17-16 game Auburn win. Like, I think it's going to be, and a lot of people are like, wow, why? Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't view Auburn as world beaters. I know that'll be to the satisfaction of you. When I look at them, Auburn's such a weird team. Like, I just feel like how Gus Malzahn's still employed, I have no idea.
He's a good coach.
No, I mean, he is a good coach, but it's like
especially.
He's like on the hot seat every other year. Like, it's crazy with him. But the big thing to me for South Carolina will be offensively. And I put out this poll to fans. Over under 20 is my number. Do you think the Gamecocks average over under 20 points per game? And I know
that is so low.
I know that sounds crazy. Dude, they averaged 22 last year. They averaged 22.
Different.
I understand, but you lose Marshawn. Look, I'm just not seeing playmakers, man. I mean, you have question marks all over the field. He's never been I like Shi Smith. I think he has a lot of ability, but he's not a proven commodity in his own right. You know, I have fans ask me, why is Shi Smith not second or third team All-SEC? He's never caught for over 500 yards in a season. I mean, you can't just give a guy like that the benefit of the doubt. And then you lose Marshawn Lloyd. And listen, I think there are a lot of other serviceable backs, capable backs in your backfield. You thankfully have depth there, but you only had one Marshawn Lloyd, in my opinion. He was going to be the bell cow. He was going to be the center of the offense. But I want to ask you more about Mike
Bobo. I don't know about all that. I hate to disagree. You probably know more about it than me.
No, that's fine.
It's a true freshman coming in.
For sure. I was putting a lot on him. No doubt.
Yeah. So I think that I get what you're saying. I hate that they lost him. But the good news with that is, like, you're not replacing someone that you counted on.
That's a proven veteran.
So I think that, the quarterback situation is going to be interesting. The way Muschamp handles the quarterback situation is, I think, going to be the key to having any kind of offensive success. The 20 points is way too low. Just way too low. Bobo, he'll get it done. The upgrade they have at offensive coordinator is, cannot stress it enough how much better and smoother and more efficient and well-tuned that entire team and staff is going to be under Mike Bobo instead of McClendon. It's going to be night and day. It's going to be night and day. But I tell you what, if they handle this quarterback situation with any kind of dispute where it's like, well, Bobo wants his guy that he brought with him from Colorado State, and the fans want Helinski or Doty or whatever. I think Helinski should be the guy. I think they should ride with him. I think there's few people that have rallied an entire fan base around them like that. That doesn't mean he's going to necessarily get it done on the field, but we saw so many glimpses last year of how talented that kid can be. He can't do what Chad Morris did last year at Arkansas, where it's like you're just constantly rotating quarterbacks. Nobody.
You got to pick one guy. You got to pick one guy. I agree.
And I think that that doesn't mean, like, if things are going wrong early on, you don't make the switch. But at the same time, like, Muschamp has to make decisions that are not always going to be popular, but he's got to just put his foot down, make a decision, and go with it. Because what's going to hurt him and this team even more than, like, what we saw last season is if there's any kind of indecisiveness and we see that translating and spilling over into the field.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to think he's going to make those best decisions because, listen, I mean, I don't think he wants to get fired. I certainly wouldn't think that. So, I mean, they all understand how important that is. I'll ask you, Marler, because this just came to my head, and it's kind of a funny thing. Do you think I'm too tough on South Carolina? I mean, dude, and here's my big thing. I agree with you. Again, I'm saying this because fans love to say that I'm being negative. Like I said, I think there is a real path to 5 wins, 6 wins. Like, I really think that's there. I just simply don't trust Will Muschamp. And those toss-up, because I think this season comes down to those toss-up games. And you know what's funny is if you look at my predictions, I've picked it pretty, like, by the book, in the sense I've picked the 3 games South Carolina will probably be favored in, and I picked them to lose the 7 games that they're going to be underdogs. I know the season's not going to play out that way. It's going to be probably madness, but I just don't trust that South Carolina, like you were saying last year, will win the games it's supposed to win, and then add it, and then win enough swing games to get to 5 or 6 wins. Call me negative, call me pessimistic. I just don't trust it.
That's fair. You do sound like a jaded ex-girlfriend constantly, just like you're never just so embittered.
Blame Steve Spurrier. That's what I'll tell. Hey, blame. I got a taste of it. I want the whole thing now.
He is. I said this before. He is the best and worst thing that's ever happened to that program.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
He had 3 straight seasons of 11 or more wins, which there's only 3 programs in the entire country. I think it was 3, maybe even 4, that were able to do that during that span, which was Stanford, Bama, South Carolina, maybe Oregon. But regardless, like, they've only had 4 total seasons with 9 or more wins. I thought it was 5. I've been saying that stat for 2 years, and it was 4. Like, and I'm not saying it to like, shit on South Carolina or anything like that. I don't think. Well, yeah, I think you're too tough on South Carolina sometimes. I really do. It's not because I respect what you do, and I love you, like, and I love like you bring so much research and like, not effort. That's not what I'm trying to say, but like you put the work in. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you don't know what you're talking about. You're just like, well, you're not like a Feinbaum caller. It's like we're gonna lose. Everything sucks, Paul.
Well, and I'm only asking that because I know that in this conversation I've been tough on them, and I'm not trying to kick somebody while they're down. I really want to be proven wrong. You know what I mean? I think, again, the way you've recruited, and to me it's more like there's just no excuse. There's no excuse. It should happen. Go out and show me. Nobody is questioning. Last year's UNC game just broke me, and in the sense of I did not know there was a level of incompetence to get your team ready to play for 8 months. Go out, you look unmotivated, not ready to go. So, whatever.
I will say real quick on that. Like, I think there's a difference between being like being like tough on them, and also like you still pull for South Carolina every week.
Oh,
like,
of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's. I think for me, like when Bama was terrible, right? For whatever reason, this is probably just because I'm like sick in the head and just unhealthy in a lot of ways. But like all week, I was like, there's no way we can beat this team. But then like as it got closer to game day, it was like honestly, it's probably the opposite. All week, I was just telling myself like we're gonna win. Like I'll tell you what. All these 2 and 3 stars Bama's recruited over the past 3 years, Marcus Carter, like all these other guys, like they're John Parker Wilson, we're gonna shock the world. And then every Saturday, I would usually be disappointed. I think there's like a level of excitement. I think that South Carolina fans feel so beaten down because of what's happening at Clemson. Clemson fans are awful. They're
insufferable.
They never used to be until they're insufferable, and it's crazy to me how bad they become. But at the same time, I think that there's a lot out there for this South Carolina team to get. I think that the fan base can understand where the expectations should be because I tell you what, I sat next to a guy at the Bama South Carolina game last year that was the worst. It was like there's got to be a happy medium of like, I'm not saying this in a bad way of you,
right.
But like the pessimistic side was like, I think we're only going to go 3-7, versus the guy that is like, we should be 10-0. And, if there wasn't that phantom holding call on the fake field goal, like, we would have won this game. And I was like, well, I don't know about that. That seems like –
Dude, to that point, I posted a clip on my countdown to kickoff from the South Carolina-Alabama game last year, and the amount of and shout out to these people, I don't care, but the amount of comments I've gotten that South Carolina should have won that game are baffling. I mean, I'm just like, you realize we lost by 24. Like,
and
not
you scored
20.
You scored the last touchdown with 15 seconds to go because I had bet on the over because it's 24.5. I was so fucking mad. Oh my god! We're sitting there in the stadium, and you know that Williams Bryce is just a sunburn waiting to happen every single time, and it's the hottest. Columbia's the hottest place on earth, and I just remember sitting there, and I was like, no way they're going to call this phantom, roughing the passer penalty on 4th down, and they did, and then I was like, there's surely my luck's not that bad that they're going to score a touchdown right at the seam. God damn, I was pissed. But yeah,
I want to speak to your point really quickly, though, and again, inject some optimism in I've been tough in this conversation. Like I said, I fully believe there's a path to 5-6 wins. I mean, dude, I'd be even willing to say if South Carolina had a different coach, I'd be picking 6-4, to be honest with you. Either way, I have to throw that in there. But no, I think there's a path to 5-6 wins. I think you can show enough progress in year 5. The key is Mike Bobo. That's the key. The key is if he's the guy and this offense clicks, I certainly think your defense is good enough. No question. But what I want to speak to is, like you were saying, the yearly expectations, because I think my expectations of what the program could be and should be are fair. Like, I think, and I talked with Barrett Salee about this last year or 2 years ago. I think South Carolina can realistically, when you look at the facilities, the fan base, the talent pool, the revenue you're getting from being in the SEC, you're in the best conference in the country. I think that South Carolina can realistically be a 8 to 9 win a year program, and every 2, 3, maybe 4 years, but probably 2, 3 years, maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. You have a veteran-led team, or you have the right quarterback, you have the right schedule, or it just clicks. Right. And you really compete for an SEC East, or you win an SEC East and get to Atlanta. Like, I think that is attainable. And that's why, again, I'm so hard on Muschamp. And we'll see what happens this year. I think if they get to 500 or better, you're back on track, because again, you're getting more 5 stars than you ever had in your history. I mean, kudos to Muschamp for that staff for doing that. But I think that is realistic, and that's why I'm so hard on it because, again, just getting to a bowl can't be good enough. Like, I think this program just has too much to offer to settle for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the biggest thing is, again, like the realistic standpoint. I don't think that you're going to get those. You're not going to get the Spur years again. It's not going to happen.
I don't think you're going to have 3 straight 11 win you. And yeah, right. I think asking for that is much. It's a little much.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think when you look at that too, and I'm not trying to hate on what Spur did because it was incredible, but like, what was the big? I mean, 11 wins in a season's cool,
right?
But what did they win?
Right.
Like, didn't go to New Year's
Outback
Bowl.
Bowls,
They didn't go to a
Capital
BC.
One
Yeah,
Bowl.
they won an Outback Bowl. You know what I mean? So it's like when you look at those 3 years, the coolest part is the 35-7 win over Georgia in 2012, and then probably Clowney's hit. And that's like, but other than that, like I think the stuff that Muschamp can achieve, like real attainable goals that he can achieve, are potentially bigger than what. Like, I mean, like if Muschamp took this team to an Outback Bowl, would people care?
I mean, I think that'd be a good achievement. I mean, you know, again, you just need to get back on that.
That's like it's the end of the world.
Well, I mean, you won 11 games. I mean, that's the difference. I mean, you didn't. I mean, listen, you won in year 2. Credit to those guys. You won in year 2 of Muschamp. You went to the Outback Bowl and beat the same Michigan team, and you won 9 games. But you know, and fans will hate me for this. The farther we get away from it, it feels like a lot of smoke and mirrors that year.
Yeah,
you led the SEC in turnover mark. I remember talking to God in the bleachers, Michael. What's his name? In the bleachers. Works for Stadium. Whatever. Anyways.
I know you're talking about,
yeah. And talking to him, and he was basically saying the following year, saying that, you know, turnovers are a lot of times their luck. Like, you have to be in the right place, right time. You know, it's not to take anything away because you practice for those opportunities. I really do believe that really good teams create their own luck. But, you know, we'll see. I'll ask you this. What's your biggest piece of optimism for this season? I think if you beat Tennessee, it completely changes the outlook of the season. But why South Carolina fans should be excited for this year?
I think it's the defense. I think the defense is going to be one of the best in the SEC. I think it's going to be one of the most improved in the SEC. I think that, and then Ryan Helinski at quarterback. I think what he's going to be able to do in the next 3 to 4 years, or maybe 5 now with the way the NCAA is. I think what he's going to be able to do in the kind of legend he's going to create for himself at that school is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, I'm excited for a healthy Helinski, that defense, like you said. Last question before I get you out of here, Marler. As of now, no Big Ten, no Pac-12, 3 SEC teams in the playoff. I mean, is that a given at this point? No, I don't think it's gonna be a given. I think they'll probably have 2 for sure. I think they'll probably have 2, but I don't think they'll have 3. You're gonna definitely have somebody from the ACC, and I think they'll definitely have somebody from the Big 12 as well. Chris Marler, Saturday Down South. Keep fingers crossed for football, man. So yeah, man, we'll do it again. Perfect. He's Chris Marler. I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you next time on another episode of the Spurs Up Show.